Hi Eddie, good morning. Chelsea the other night, fantastic result for you, great performance. How much do you feel you all needed the positivity that brought you?
Yeah, I think we did. Really pleased with the response from the players. Wasn't an easy game, was never going to be. But I thought our performance was very good. And thankfully, we got the reward for that performance. 2 good goals, clean sheet as well. So it was a good night.
And the draw has you at home in the quarterfinals. Another Premier League team, Brentford. I suppose you just wanted to be at home against possibly anybody. That's the key, St James's Park.
Yeah, I think whenever you go into a cup draw, the home aspect for us is really important. It has been important for a while here. I mean, the environment again on Wednesday was second to none. It was a sellout. There was a really good feeling. Can't thank the supporters enough for that. There was no hangover from recent results. It was really good, and that helped us massively. Now, yeah, we've got a home draw, tough game against Brentford, who are in good form. So we'll look forward to that. That's further down the line. Now we go back to the Premier League.
How much did the performance of a number of players, including those who were brought back into the team against Chelsea, give you a tough set of decisions to make for Arsenal?
Yeah, it was good to see so many players performing well. I think a lot of players that came in did themselves no harm at all. It was good to be able to rotate some of the squad to see the strength and depth that we have in certain positions. I think 3 games in 6 days for us is a challenge, especially early kickoff again. So we're going to have to see how the players are physically, pick a team according to physical well-being, form, and obviously our opponent.
And is midfield particularly difficult for you, given the performance of Sandro in a slightly different role, Bruno coming on, playing a slightly different role himself, but also Sean Longstaff and Joe Willock coming back into the team and giving you something extra too?
Yeah, I think those players that you mentioned, they're all very, very good players in their own right. And as I say, when you face 3 games in 6 days, I think it's great to have those options. I think it's a tough ask for someone to play all 3 games in a week. It's not impossible, but it's a tough ask. And are they going to be at their best, absolute best physically in all 3 games? I'm not sure. So to have the ability to rotate and to hopefully everyone enters the pitch feeling in a really good condition. There are a couple of knocks in the squad as well, so we'll have to assess how everyone is today.
Arsenal, it's almost a year to the day, I think, since you played them at home last season, and you got what was a really important result. Controversy from their point of view about the goal. What do you remember about the match?
Nothing. I don't remember the goal. I don't know. No, it was I do remember it being a great atmosphere. Very, very physical game. Very competitive. 2 teams absolutely going at each other in a really competitive way. I thought it was a really good advert for the Premier League. Of course, there was controversy around the goal, and I understand that. But just positive emotions, really, from the day.
Last thing, you told us, I think a week ago, that Callum Wilson wouldn't feature in any of the 3 games this week. How is he doing, and is there a chance that he could play next week against Nottingham Forest?
Yeah, he's doing okay. He's building his load again. As I said, there was no real injury, but just a feeling in his body that he couldn't push as hard as he wanted to push, or needs to push to play at this level. Is physically you have to be able to. You have to be perfect really in how you feel. We'll make a decision. He's definitely out for this game. We'll make a decision based on how he feels for Nottingham Forest, but probably with the 2-week gap, it probably makes sense to leave him.
Thanks, Razor. Keith?
Morning, Andy.
Morning.
You said a moment ago that you got a couple of knocks ahead of this one. Are you able to tell us who they are?
No, they're just general fatigue, really, game fatigue. I think it was a good physical game against Chelsea, but both games on the Sunday and the Wednesday were they're intense matches, so it's normal game fatigue that you get 24 hours after a game and 48 hours. So we need to make sure whoever enters the pitch against Arsenal is in their best condition.
And obviously you started Anthony the other night, despite him having missed the previous game, and Alex came off early as well. Was that just precautionary with Alex, and how are they with the recovery from the injuries they've both had this season?
Yeah, I think they both feel okay. I think it's one of them. We'll assess how they feel today. sometimes 48 hours you can feel different to you do to 24 hours. It's not necessarily always a straight line with how the body feels. They both had niggling injuries. Alex had his toe. Anthony's had a groin. So we'll make a decision today.
I know you said there a moment ago as well, it's good to rotate, and it's difficult for any player to play 3 high-level games like that in the space of, on 6 days, isn't it? But do the performances of those that came in, I'm thinking of Sean Longstaff, Lloyd Kelly at centre-back, do they give you a bit of a headache with regards to your team selection? Yeah,
they certainly give you the ability to change the team, and I think many times I've said I don't want necessarily the team to pick itself, but I also don't want to be going game to game changing too many players, because I don't think that's healthy either. So I believe in a settled team, but of course with midweek fixtures, especially at the intensity of games now, I think you have to have the ability to rotate. So let's see. I'll pick the strongest team that I can, that I think gives us the best chance to win.
And obviously Bruno normally always plays, and he plays in that central role of the 3. You played Sandro there the other night, did very well. I know that might give you a headache of its own. Is that somewhere you'd consider deploying him again in the future, and could you play them both in the same team with Sandro there and perhaps Bruno, one of the more forward midfielders?
Yeah, I think all options are open. Sandro can definitely play both positions, whether it be higher or lower, and that's why we recruited him in a way, because he had that versatility. We didn't want to sign necessarily one player for one position. We needed that flexibility, especially going into the Champions League season that we faced. With Bruno, I think Bruno's slightly more complex in terms of where he plays, because I think he has natural strengths where he gravitates to the ball and always wants to be on the ball, and that's his biggest strength. So playing him away from the ball is different for him, and it means he has to play more positionally. So that's something we'll look at. But I think good players can play anywhere, so we'll see.
And obviously Sandro's been building himself back up since his ban, but it felt like that match the other night was him back to perhaps what we saw against Aston Villa way back at the start of last season. How much good has that done him the other night? And have you noticed an extra spring in his step off the back of it?
Not so much a spring, not after the game. He covered a lot of ground on Wednesday. I thought he did incredibly well. I was really pleased with his performance. I thought he played with discipline. He brought a calmness to our midfield. He always uses the ball well. I think that goes without saying. But I think just the intricacies of the position, I thought he got bang on. So I was really pleased.
Thanks, Keith. Andy?
Morning, Eddie. You said after the game on Wednesday that you hope everyone else feels a little bit better about themselves. But most importantly, how do you feel about yourself after what was a big result?
Yeah, I think winning always makes you feel a little bit better about everything. You wake up in the morning and back to the question I just had, there's a spring in your step when you win, and when you don't, I think you're sort of soul searching a little bit and trying to find solutions to potential issues that you have. But we know that was just one game and it was in a different competition. We have to focus on the Premier League. It's such an important season for us. It's such an important competition. We know how high the bar is in terms of the level. So we now play one of the most consistent teams in the Premier League for the last couple of years. Very, very good team, very good manager. So the challenge for us is never easy. But we're at home, early kickoff. I really hope the atmosphere is going to be red hot. I'm sure it will be. And we give our best.
There's a clip of Emil Kraft from Wednesday night, marauding forwards. Very Emil Kraft-like, I suppose. Can you understand why, I think they've called him Krafu, the fans, has become almost like a cult hero amongst Newcastle United fans?
Yeah, I think Krafu maybe originated from some of our players in the squad. Certainly maybe one of the coaches as well adopted many nicknames for Crafty, and Krafu is one that we all love to use internally. I think he's just such an unassuming, brilliant professional, really hard-working, so dependable, that I think you're instantly, when you meet him, you like him. You just see that solid character. But also he's a very, very good player, and probably very underrated by the outside world. But internally, I think we all love him and we all see his qualities. He can play different positions for us this year, and he's been brilliant at centre half. I thought he did really well at fullback. Players like that, I always say, are so important, and we really value him.
You mentioned positions there. You alluded to this on Wednesday night after the game about Joe Linton and how he can play seemingly every single pitch or outfield position on the pitch. What is his best position, do you think?
It's tough to give you a definitive answer on that. I love him in probably in the two best positions would be as a left 8 and as a left winger. But I think the beauty of Joe Linton, as I said, he ended up playing right wing back for us against Chelsea, and he goes there and he just gives his absolute best to it with no questions asked. And I think that's quite rare in the modern day, that you have a player that given information that doesn't say why, just says, yeah, no problem, I'll do it. And that's why I think, again, he's got the respect of everybody at the football club.
Just finally, where did the Chelsea performance kind of land on the intensity being Newcastle's identity scale, and where do you hope the Arsenal performance tomorrow lands on that intensity scale?
Yeah, it would be up there. I think every game's different, and every opponent plays differently. So, you know, we all have our plans and things in place to try and implement. But as I say, if the opposition acts in a certain way, it's sometimes difficult to execute those. So it was a night where things fell into place for us. But most importantly, I think when you play, the attitude of the players has to be befitting of, you know, the expectations set upon them, and it was right from kickoff. You saw Anthony Gordon go and chase down the keeper, then the left side centre half, and win a throw in and get a standing ovation for his effort. So it's that kind of attitude that we need on a regular basis.
Thanks, Andy. Jerry?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
I think a lot of fans, certainly from what we can judge by social media reaction this week, think you've hit on a real formula with the way you played, for example, Tonali and Longstaff in midfield this week. And after a winless run in the league, they're bound to want to see you play more of that pattern in the league. Do you have some sympathy with that?
Yeah, I think it's always... selections are always there to be debated, and they always will be debated, especially when you have such a large fan base as we do, I think. And you're always going to get split opinions on whatever I do. And that's where I have to be sure with my own decision. I can't second guess myself, and I've never been that way. I've always been very clear on what I feel the team needs. I will then obviously put together a team that I think can execute it. So that's one of the great things about football: the debate, the intrigue into what goes on.
Must be good to have what we all call selection headaches compared to some of the periods when you've sat in these conferences and bemoaned a very long injury list.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'd prefer it this way, where we have decisions and options, than at times last year when we had none. And it all goes round in phases, I think. Our injury list isn't perfect. We still have a lot of very good players that are missing that would make a difference, but it's certainly better than it was at times last year.
I know you've alluded to this already, but just to reinforce the point, Arsenal's going to be much more of an acid test of where you are generally than a second choice Chelsea 11, isn't it?
Yeah, I think every game's very difficult. The game again on Wednesday, you can put the question like that, but Chelsea put out an exceptional team, so I've got no issue with the level of opposition. It was a Premier League game for me, but this is, you know, a Premier League game, and it'll be different test. Arsenal have got their qualities. They've done again very well this season. They've got a real solid look about their team. They don't concede many goals. Very good from set plays. Very physical team. So we've got to be ready for that test.
Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Thank you, broadcasters. We'll go to Damien, Lee, and then to George.
Hi, Eddie. Can I just ask you about Joe Willock? He's had an awful trot with injuries and is bound to get back to fitness. How close is he to being able to make an impact on a sustained basis for you?
He's getting closer, I would say. I think he has had a tough time with injuries. From what looked like a serious hamstring injury when he first did it a long time ago. He then added complications in other areas of his body, and it hasn't been a straight road back for him. He's had lots of moments where he's been incredibly frustrated that he hasn't been able to kick on and get to the levels that he has done historically for us. I thought Wednesday was probably his best game since he's come back. I think he physically looked really, really good, and that is his game. So if he's not feeling physically good, I think you lose a major part of his armoury. His ability to run box to box in a really quick way, his ability to sense where the goal is and where the ball's going to arrive. I think he did a couple of times, obviously one for the second goal, and once towards the end of the half where he's had to sprint near enough 3/4 of the pitch to get on an anti-Gordon cross. That's Joe at his best. So I was really pleased to see it. He's been a big miss for us because he adds a totally different feel in our midfield, a real goal threat and athletic qualities we need.
How difficult has that whole situation been for him, and how have you had to, you and your staff had to manage him through it?
It's been really difficult for him because he's young. He wants to play. He feels like every young player does, that he's desperate to leave an imprint at the club and carry on his really good form. That he was in a really, really good place before his injury, and the team was as well. And then when you can't quite get to the bottom of what's wrong with you, and it's a lot longer than initially expected, it can be incredibly frustrating. And then it's probably helped him build resilience and a change in mentality for him, but it's not something I'm sure he'll want to experience again.
Thanks, Damien. Lee?
Morning, Eddie. The buy-in of the players has been evident, I think, in defeat and in victory in the last week or so. How important is that for you?
When you say buy-in, what do you mean, Lee?
Well, everyone seems to be on side.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I think, well, it's everything. If you don't have the players with you in terms of your tactical preparation and buying into how you're going to play and how you're going to try and win the game, then I think you're beaten before you start. So I think the players have to want to go to work. They have to want to implement everything that you do, and that's in and out of possession. I don't think we've had an issue with that at all. Some of our delivery's been slightly inconsistent, but I don't think we've had an issue with wanting to do it and wanting to do well. But as always, there's always issues and problems that arise on a daily basis, and you're just trying to steer the team in a good direction.
And how important are squad members like Emil Kraft?
In my opinion, with the squad, you can't have 20 players that always expect to play every minute of every game. You need a balance to the squad, and now I know Crafty's incredibly driven and wants to play, as do all the players in the squad, but I think there's different dynamics and different personalities needed to make the squad harmonious. Emil would be one of those people that creates and helps create a really good environment, whether he's playing or not playing. And there's several members of the squad that I could speak the same of, that have had incredible impacts here over the last 3 years, that don't necessarily get the credit they deserve, but play a huge part. Emil will be one of those. We've always talked about Paul Dummett, Matt Ritchie, players historically that have now left, that gave so much more than just what they did on the pitch, and those players are so invaluable to me.
And just on Joe Willock, it's probably easy for people to talk about the injuries he's had, but if you put a showreel of his goals together, it's quite an impressive one, because he's scored a lot of big goals for this club.
And now he has, and it's part of what his game brings. He's got that unexpected ability to do things that you don't necessarily know what he's going to do. And I'm sure Joe doesn't know. He's one of those players that acts off instinct a lot of the time, but those instincts are usually creative and goal-driven. So it's great to see him in the box and doing what he does best on Wednesday. As I say, we've missed it a lot when he's been injured.
Okay, quite a few to get through. We'll go to George first, then to Ian.
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
That's what we've been searching for. I think that's what you said the other night. Was that the blueprint?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of a high-pressing performance and sort of the off-the-ball plan, yes. But every game's different. If you're playing against a team that plays a different way, you wouldn't be able to execute that as effectively. So that's where you have to understand that it's not. If you don't see a blueprint of that every week, it's not necessarily because of our players' input to the game. So it's always different. Every game's a different challenge, but you still have to find a way to try and win and defend your goal effectively. I thought we defended our goal effectively really well, and not just in the press, but around our box. There was a lot of good blocks and a lot of good defensive instincts taking over. So I was really pleased with how we defended.
But has it set a tone, do you think, in terms of that sort of attitude? And is it important that everybody sticks to that kind of tone from now on?
Yeah, in terms of the attitude, absolutely. I mean, the attitude is the most important thing, because if you enter the pitch not prepared to work, you're not going to win any game. And if you're not together and united and absolutely ready to do everything you need to defy the opposition, it's not going to work either. So we've been a bit inconsistent with our delivery, as I've said this season. That was much better on Wednesday.
Thanks, George. We'll go to Ian, Luke and then Craig. Ian?
Morning, Eddie.
Morning.
As you touched on earlier, games against Arsenal can be very physical, controversial, spiky, sometimes ill-tempered. Does that bring the best out of Newcastle?
I think it has done, historically. I think we've, especially in our Champions League season, I think we relished those games. That's tended to bring out the best in us, but I think we were maybe psychologically in a slightly different place. I think the whole club was in a slightly different place then, in a different place now, and we need to make sure that we can, we're adaptable enough to bring that when we need it, and also bring another side to our game when we need it. You can have an idea of how a game will follow through, but it doesn't always work in that way. So adaptability is key. If someone and another team and or even ourselves is going to bring that side of our game, and it's going to help us in that moment, then it needs to be there.
On a similar theme, we saw in last season's Fly in the Wall documentary, you do sometimes choose to wind up your players with a motivational speech before kick-off.
That's one way of putting it.
Yeah, right. Is this one of the games you might choose to, and if not, when do you choose to do that?
Usually based on my feeling. It's not something you can necessarily force. It's got to be natural. I always tried to look at lots of various ways to motivate the players, whether that's individually, within units, within the team, with a meeting. There's loads and loads of different ways, and usually before a game we'll not try everything together, but we'll choose a psychological line to use, but only if it's natural and it feels right.
So will you keep your language clean tomorrow?
Yeah, it'd probably be mixed. Usually I think there's a time to bring out lots of different things.
Thanks, Ian. Luke?
Just to pick up on something Andy asked, have you changed your fitness regime?
Go on.
Well, you just looked a bit sprightly when you came in. Is that just
Sprightly.
You knew he was coming to see you, Luke. That's what it was.
I didn't feel sprightly coming in, so if I looked it, I'll take that, Luke. But no, have I changed a little bit? Actually, yes.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
Intuitive.
But I've got no idea if that's reflected in my walking gait.
Okay.
But
on a more serious note, Bobby Robson once said about Arsenal that they needed to be able to learn to lose, open brackets, with some dignity. What did you make of Mikel Arteta's behaviour after the game last season?
I made nothing of it. I think for me, you've got to understand I'm wrapped in my own world, as we all are, my own existence, my own thoughts, and my own thoughts were purely on my own team and how proud I was of them on that day, and because I felt we were in a challenging moment of the season. Actually, we had fixtures piling up and injuries piling up alongside it, so just really proud of the players that we had available that gave everything to win a really competitive game. I thought it was a really high level game. As I say, I know the goal took the headlines really, and the controversy of the goal, and as I said, I understand it, but just really thinking about how proud I was of the group, and I hope I'm feeling the same way after this game.
Again, just to pick up something Ian said, you had a bit of not a nasty streak, but you remember all the stuff about the dark arts and the gamesmanship. Do you want your team to get that kind of, I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but that mentality back a little bit more?
Yeah, but I think it's related to winning. I think when you're winning games, everything's different. You know, when you're leading games, everything's different to if you're chasing games. So I think it, in part, will be overhyped and talked about probably more because we were in that position a lot that season. This season we haven't been in that position as often, so you end up being the reactive team trying to chase the game effectively. Certainly don't want to be in that position. we want to be the team in control. But certainly, whatever it takes to win within the rules, I'm a firm believer in that, and I think that's ability we had to close out tight games that season was incredibly good. We managed games very well. We had a different makeup to the team than we do now. We had different personalities in there. I think we had maybe a little bit more experience in the group, and that can often pay dividends at that time.
So I've just wasted one question on your fitness regime. I presume you want to make it as uncomfortable as you possibly can for Arsenal on and off the pitch?
I want to make it as difficult as we can for any opposition team coming to St James's Park. I think that's part of the beauty of playing at home. Certainly don't want to make a comfortable environment for any team, and so we're desperate to do well and perform well.
Thanks, Luke. Craig?
Morning, Eddie. You said earlier that Sandro is versatile, but every player normally has a preference. Anthony Gordon is versatile, but he prefers to play on the left. On Wednesday night, it looked like Sandro really thrived with that extra responsibility of being the man in the middle. I think you said last week he needed more game involvement. Wednesday felt like his most involved game yet. Has that given you something to think about with regards his position, that actually he might want to play in the same position where Bruno does perhaps prefer to play also?
Yeah, I think with Sandro, I think it all depends on the game. Sometimes your central player, your six, can be more involved, and then in another game, your higher players can be more involved. It depends on the game, really. I don't think Sandro was necessarily heavily involved in our build-up phase on Wednesday, but I think he did a really good job at controlling space and making sure we were disciplined as a team defensively. I thought he showed a really high level of tactical ability and understanding of that role, considering he hasn't played it in a while. He can play both very, very well, and he has done for this football club. I think I wouldn't want to label him in any one role, and I think we need players that are adaptable and versatile.
Could you see that scenario where Bruno and Sandro started in the same team, with Sandro centrally and Bruno to the right of him? If you go back to Bruno's first season, when he was scoring diving headers at the Gallagher end and chipping the goalkeeper down at Norwich, it seemed he was playing in a more advanced 8, and that brought something different out of him.
Yeah, well, Bruno's played that role for us a few times, playing the 8 role, whether we're chasing a game. He started games in that role. As I said, I think Bruno's biggest strength is coming to the ball. A lot of the time when you're playing with midfielders in higher positions, occasionally you want them to run away from the ball. So that's something that we need to make sure that we get right. But both players can play all positions. They're very good players. I've got no doubt that they can make it work.
Thanks, Craig. A few left. We've got Scott, Jordan, Joe, and then Kieran to finish.
Eddie, most of the time so far we've seen Lloyd Kelly playing at left back. He obviously played centre half at the on Wednesday night. Played really well. Yeah. He's probably athleticism makes him stand out amongst the other centre half options. Maybe a little bit different to what else you've got in there. I mean, what do you think of him in terms of a centre half? And I know versatility is important, but can he establish himself as a centre half?
Yeah, he can, for sure. I think Lloyd is, again, following a similar theme, very good player in both positions. I think last year for Bournemouth he played pretty much dovetailed between both positions very well. For us, he's been used early season as a left back. I think the last few appearances he's been a centre back. I think he looked really comfortable on Wednesday. I thought he did really well. He is unique in the respect he's got very, very good top end pace. Very athletic. He's got a lovely left foot as well. So very pleased. Early days for him settling into a new club, but I think he's adapted really well. Of course, I like him, having worked with him previously. I know the qualities that he brings. I think he's going to be a really good signing for us.
And you referenced earlier Arsenal's set plays. Can you just give us a little bit of insight into what, if anything, you've done about that this week? Because they're fairly unique in that you're not scratching around to work out what they're going to do. We kind of know where Saka's going to look to put the ball. We know who's going to be charging in to get on the end of it. But other teams have found it really hard to stop that. Have you done things differently this week to work around that?
Well, not yet, we haven't. But today we will. Today we'll sort of go into our match preparation with the players. Of course, earlier in the week we've been looking at Chelsea. Yesterday was about recovering. We couldn't work with the players, but today we will, and we'll cram all our match preparation into one day. I think that the set plays is always about your organisation and your structures. And obviously you need players to want to head the ball. And I'm always reluctant to talk too much about set plays because the intricacies of what goes into it. But hopefully we can nail it.
Is there a unique challenge with Arsenal? Because they do seem to be exceptionally good at it, even if for a top, Premier League level, top level, they stand out.
Well, they're a big side and they've got great delivery, and obviously they practice and rehearse set moves, and they prepare for the opposition as well. So I think they're very good, and we're going to have to be very good to repel their threat.
Okay, can we just move to single questions if we can to finish? Jordan?
Just going back to the cup game and the front three and Anthony being on the right-hand side, would you consider playing Anthony on the right-hand side more often, and how would he react to that, given his preference to play on the left wing?
Yeah, of course, it's something we'll look at to try and find the right solution for the team. I think Anthony will do what's best for the team. He's got no issue with that. But of course, we want to see him being effective. I thought he was effective on Wednesday. I thought he played well. I thought he had some really good moments. So yeah, I don't see an issue. He's never said to me that he would refuse to play a position, but no player would, because they want to play football. And Anthony's a really good team player, as well as being an outstanding individual. But it's just about making sure that we get him the ball in the right areas, and he's effective in that position.
Thanks, Jordan. Joe?
Hi, Eddie. Because of what happened in this game last year and maybe a bit of Arsenal's disciplinary record, is this a game you really need your leaders like Bruno to sort of step up and lead by example and be a calming influence on your team, to not get involved with any sort of dark art, as anyone said, against Arsenal?
Well, I think the key thing in any game, Premier League game, as we saw in the first game of the season, for us, keeping 11 players on the pitch is absolutely crucial. Playing with discipline, playing with emotion and fire and spirit and all those things is so important, but you need emotional control as well. So that's something that we'll need to be very aware of, just ourselves, not talking about Arsenal. You always need that control, but you need that fire as well. So we need to get the balance right.
Thanks, Joe. Just curious to finish.
Morning, Eddie. Arsenal obviously have bigger revenues, but it's easy to forget they didn't become a regular top four challenger under Mikel Arteta, a title challenger overnight. Is that instructive for you with Newcastle's own journey, and how would you close that gap ultimately in the coming years?
Yeah, I think the key thing for Arsenal, I think they've recruited very well. I think it always boils down to long-term success, to recruitment of players. Getting that right on a consistent basis gives you the opportunity to grow your team. One or two mistakes and it becomes very, very difficult to get that growth. So I think they've managed the club really well. They seem like they've had good relationships internally, solidity from boardroom level. And Mikel's done a great job on the coaching pitch, and he's improved the players that he's had. So put that all together, and I think naturally you're going to be successful. And I think we face all those challenges in terms of trying to do the same thing.
Thanks, gents.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Cheers.